Okay, so today on the Profit podcast, as I've just mentioned in the intro, we've got a special guest, Adam Cummins, and he is the head of education here at Profit Personal Training. He's also a nutrition coach and currently studying a master's degree in that field as well. So first and foremost, Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Matt. Thank you very much for having me.
And before we dig into any specific topics around nutrition and the stuff that you teach, I thought it'd be a great idea to let you introduce yourself to the audience by telling us your story. I know that there's some great information in there about how you became passionate about nutrition. So over to you. Let's hear that story.
Thank you. Yeah, so I guess I've been a personal trainer now for 11 years. I've been in the health and fitness industry for now 11 years. I've been with Profit 9 years, but my story kind of starts when I was about 8 or 9. As a child, I was just always fascinated and loved food. I love cooking. I remember the first this light bulb moment, I guess, is when I first started to cook at the age of 8 or 9 with my mum, and I made my first family meal for everybody. And ever since then, I just love the food and love the cooking side of things. When I left college, I knew I didn't want to go to university. It was, at the time, a waste of time I saw, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. So I had the choice of going into coaching. I always wanted to do some kind of sports coaching or catering. I'd worked in kitchens for many years, and obviously loving cooking, I decided to go train as a chef. So I trained as a chef. Love that side of it. However, the split shifts, the long days, the no weekends off, and the angry head chef with a knife in his hand wasn't necessarily the environment I wanted to be in as an 18-year-old. So I decided to go and find a job where I could wear shorts in a nice aircon gym and be a bit more relaxed in terms of hours as well. So I became a fitness instructor and then quickly into personal training. I was a PT for a year in the gym group in Manchester before I joined Profit. And in that year, I learned a lot. I became quite busy, I guess, compared to the other trainers in there. I was the busiest trainer, and everything was great. The training was great. Clients loved it. My client retention was very good as well. However, client results were lacking. I don't even remember one client even changing their body composition even slightly. So I saw that eventually my client list and my clientele was dropping off. My bubble was probably bursting, and it was either sink or swim. And I chose to jump ship at that point, and I chose to join Profit. I saw Profit advertising, and I saw that they had an education and a development system. And I just loved the idea of being a part of a team where they would bring me on as a PT. I felt like that's what I was missing. I needed to learn more as a personal trainer at that time. And they brought structure, so they provided training programs and nutrition plans. And as soon as I gave these nutrition plans to clients, I was noticing really good results, like seriously good results. The plan itself was what was very popular back then. So it was a very low carb, paleo style elimination diet, which nowadays people would freak out about. It's very much seen as pseudoscience, but as you are well aware, that's what was all the rage at the point. So although I was getting really good results, it was probably only about 20% of them. And the other 80%, I kind of forgot about, I guess. I was so wrapped up with the success of the 20% that the other 80%, I guess I ignored. And I didn't see it as my responsibility. I didn't see it as my fault that they weren't following this plan. It's like, I've given you a plan. It's not my fault you're not following it. And I guess at the time, I just didn't have any more knowledge or any other way of getting someone to follow nutrition. It was either you do this one plan I know, or I can't help you. And that's how it was. Eventually, my client list started to dwindle. So I went from the busiest PT in the company to one of the least busiest. And at that point, it became so bad. It was a knife edge whether I left the industry or not, because I couldn't afford to carry on living at that point. So just as I was sort of wondering if I have to leave personal training, we went to FitPro, which was for people who don't know, it's a convention that they used to do down at Loughborough University, where all the big names in the health and fitness and the sports industries would be down there doing lectures. And I was meant to go see a postural assessment one, but it bores me senseless that. So I snuck in to one of John Berardi from Precision Nutrition seminar. Didn't really know anything about him, but literally it was a light bulb moment for me. It was everything he said just spoke to me, and I came away from there really inspired and motivated to start again. And I realized where I've been going wrong. I realized that not everyone's going to follow a plan, and you actually have to build habits into someone's life, and you have to coach someone, and you can't just expect someone to, or everyone to just do as you tell them. So that was definitely a big moment for me. I actually met a very, very young Martin McDonald that weekend as well. So it wasn't a bad weekend in terms of meeting nutrition specialists, I guess. Going forward after that, the fourth light bulb moment in my life was, and the way I got into the teaching was I put my hand up, did an expo within Profit. So we were asked to do one. I was never, as a child, and especially at school, I used to be really nervous and a really bad speaker in front of people. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. I used to hate it. I used to get very sick feeling before I'd have to speak in like an English class. And I put my hand up because I wanted to present, because I felt like I had something to say. And I felt like I had something that could help other trainers. Basically, they could learn from my mistakes that I'd made in the early years. And I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone. So I did that, realized I love the presenting side of it. I'm an obsessive learner. I read all day. If I'm not reading, I'm watching documentaries. So it's one of those. I'm definitely an obsessive learner. And I find one of the best ways for me to actually learn is to teach other people. So it's just naturally fallen that way. The final thing that really clicked for me and got me to where I am now is I had a client at the time who'd been really successful. I lost a lot of weight, and then she started to plateau. And at this point in plateauing, she sent me a recipe, I remember, for some healthy protein balls. And they were all the ingredients I told her were good. And because, as you'll know, for the first 5 years of my career, calories weren't invented. It was fat doesn't make you fat, carbs is the enemy, calories you don't even have to worry about. So we never spoke about calories. Then all of a sudden I'm looking, I'm going, right, it's got avocado and it's got cocoa, it's got almond butter, it's got coconut oil, it's had all these fat sources. And I just totaled it up and I realized every protein ball is about 500 calories. And that was like the light bulb moment for me to realize why some of my clients were still failing, even though they were following everything I was telling them. And at that moment, I decided to unlearn everything I already knew and challenge everything I'd already learned and basically re-educate myself in nutrition. So I started following a new crowd, I guess, the evidence-based crowd, as it's probably known now. And I just spent a lot of my time reading research and I guess myth busting and just teaching myself new things and righting the wrongs of what I had known for quite a few years beforehand. So that's what's led me to where I am at now. I feel that my job now, my responsibility as a presenter, as a educator, is to not only help teach other trainers, like within Profit, we have 140, 150 trainers now, but it's to point them in the right direction. It's to guide them to other places of learning, which is going to help them, help their clients. And it's to teach them from my own mistakes so they don't make as many, so they don't end up in a position where they may have to leave the industry just because they're a bit naive. So that's what I spent my time doing now, and I take my responsibility really seriously. So I study hard to make sure what I know is the best that I can provide for the other trainers.
That's an awesome story. And I think what really stands out from me hearing that, because that's actually the first time I've heard that story in full, is that nutrition is a topic that a lot of trainers can easily run away from. They can find it overwhelming, they can run away. And like you said, the easiest thing is probably just to leave the industry, like feel like you're maybe not good enough and just leave. But you sort of didn't accept that. You challenged yourself, and luckily that talk by John Berardi came at the right time. It's funny that you should mention that talk, because at that time I think I'd been in Profit about 4 or 5 months, and it's the first time I'd been invited to something like this, and I had no idea what I was going to. And I actually snuck into that same talk. I was meant to be at one by John Hardy or something, and just decided I was going to see this nutrition guy from Canada instead. And I think after that, I managed to get myself into his other 2 talks that weekend as well. And it had a similar effect on me. I didn't really geek out on nutrition as much as you have, but it certainly turned a light bulb on in my head as to there's a whole other side to nutrition that we're not even talking about. It's the first time I heard the book mentioned motivational interviewing and things like that, and this side of nutrition coaching. So, one of the reasons I mention that is because a big part of what you do now is nutrition coaching. You are a nutrition coach. It's a phrase that is being bandied around the industry a lot at the minute. It's becoming more popular as something that people give themselves as a title. It's one of these. Same way people like to call themselves an entrepreneur in our industry, people like to call themselves a nutrition coach.
Or an online nutrition.
Yeah. I thought this would be a great opportunity to get the opinion of someone that actually does it and does it properly day in, day out, as to, like, number one, what actually is a nutrition coach? Like, what is that? And number 2, what does a nutrition coach do? Because I think that what people say they're doing and what they actually do are 2 very different things when it comes to nutrition coaching. So give myself and the audience, like, your opinion on what those things are and what they actually look like.
Okay, yeah. So I think there's 2 ways of looking at this. So I'm going to start with what a nutrition coach, I guess what people perceive a nutrition coach is and what it actually isn't. So I think nowadays a lot of people call themselves nutrition coaches, as you say, or you find these online coaches, and what they're actually doing is they're just providing prescriptive nutrition plans. They aren't providing any kind of coaching. They might be providing tools to weigh themselves, measure themselves, and give out a nutrition plan. Now, first of all, as nutritionists and as personal trainers, we shouldn't be giving out prescriptive nutrition. So actually giving someone a specific, you have to eat this on these days, this much of it, we can't do it. It's not within our scope of practice. We should leave that down to the dietitians. And the second side of it, the main thing is there's no coaching involved. If I give someone a plan, like I used to in the first point, some people will follow it, and that's great, but you're not going to learn anything from it. You tend to find people just follow a plan and they don't actually know why they're eating what they're eating. And then the week after, they have 5 grams of peanut butter removed from their plan. They just do that like robots. But you ask them, why has that happened? Or you ask them to swap a food for something else, and they just freak out. And they freak out because they're given such a rigid structure that it almost creates just a really bad relationship with food, which I'll come on to in a minute. It's one of my pet hates with how this happens. And I'm so passionate about making sure people's relationship with food is pretty much my number 1 priority. So that's definitely what a nutrition coach shouldn't be. If you're investing yourself into a nutrition coach, there should be some kind of coaching involved. Now, coaching, I like to describe it as a tour guide to your own city. So what I mean by that is, quite recently, last year, me and my girlfriend, we went and did a treasure hunt around Manchester. And Manchester is my city. I've known it for years. I've lived there for years. And this treasure hunt sent us all over the place. And there's things I learned about Manchester I never knew before. And when people come to us, it's their body, and they clearly understand their body, but they don't necessarily know how to get the most out of it. They don't necessarily know how to use it in the best way. And as a coach, I believe it's our job to take someone from where they are now and move them towards where they want to get to, and help create the environment and help create structure for them to be able to do that, build confidence for them so they can do so. When it comes to nutrition specifically, the world of nutrition, as wonderful as it is, there's a load of crap out there, and there's a lot of pseudoscience and a lot of stuff out there which just doesn't make sense. And it's such a cluttered industry that it's confusing people. It's confusing so many everyday people. They don't know what to do. And when people are confused, it stops them in their tracks. They're more likely to do nothing than something if they don't know what to do. So I see the main job for me is clarifying the picture and decluttering everything and simplifying nutrition so they understand what's important, what they should do, what they need to do to get them forward, and then educate them in a way so they understand what they don't need to stress about. I think it's just about removing stress for people and showing them that it's really quite simple. All you have to do is very basic, simple stuff consistently, and you'll get forward with it. The three things I always say we should do as a nutrition coach: first is educate. So we should be educating our clients to eat better, understand more about food, understand how the body works, so understand energy balance. As soon as one understands energy balance, it becomes so much clearer and easier for people. So I use like a bank account and money analogy. I tend to use a lot of analogies and metaphors with clients because the simpler and the easier you can relate the science, the more they're going to get it. I think then we have to inspire them to take action. So we have to create that environment and really motivate them, get them to see, almost clear the path for them so they do it. And then we have to empower them. We have to empower them to take responsibility for their own lifestyle and take responsibility for their own actions, and get them to understand that this should be a lifelong thing and it shouldn't necessarily be a quick fix. It's not a fad, and you don't diet and then not diet, it's just eat well. So that's, I guess, what I do as a coach. The 5 cornerstones, I guess, of my nutrition coaching are simple. First of all, results. I want to get results from my clients because that's what they come in to for, that's what they pay for. Second of all, I'm very much health first. So I will always make sure that whatever I do, I have their best intentions and their health first. I won't ever do anything. Whenever I've worked with female clients who want to get lean, I basically tell them, as soon as your period stops, you have to tell me, because I'm not willing to work with you when that happens. And we have to adapt the nutrition to keep you in a healthier range. And I think the other areas are freedom with food. For me, food is my big passion, and I can eat any food anywhere I go in the world. Stick me in any restaurant and I'll eat anything. And I don't feel any stress. I don't feel any worries around food. And I understand that's not the same for everyone. So if I can create food freedom for people, improve their relationship with food, so they don't see food as good or bad, they don't see carbs as the devil anymore, which I am at fault for with a few of my old clients. And I've had to retrain and almost like re-educate them on that. So yeah, I feel like they're the main points I try to get across as well when it comes to my actual nutrition coaching.
Excellent. And I know that as part of your journey as a coach, now that you've got a lot more experience in working with people, you've started to develop systems that lesser experienced trainers can use. They can pick up, they can use them, and they can start to understand how to coach people better themselves. And one of the ways you've done that is by highlighting like a series of client types, almost like archetypes of people and personalities, and understanding how these people generally respond to coaching and food and things like that. So yeah. I know that was something you did recently with some of our level 4 trainers. So if you give us a bit of an idea of how you came up with that, like what that actually looks like, and then maybe give us a little insight into what these different client types look like give us a couple of examples of those.
Yeah, sure. So I definitely cannot take credit for this one. This came from Precision Nutrition. So when I first did the Precision Nutrition course and I started reading their stuff, one of the things that stood out, and this is what I presented at that expo, that first time I ever presented in front of all the ProFit trainers, was about 3 different client types. And I've kind of adapted it over the years. And when it comes to client types and the different people I work with, I guess when you work with someone like yourself for a decade, you come across so many amazing people, like different personalities, different goals, different backgrounds, and different motivations, I guess. And with that, obviously, you realize that personal training and personal nutrition should be just that. It should be personal to them. And you have to find out more about that person. You can't just give cookie cutter style plans. The different types of clients, as I said, if we use the ones I've done recently, I use a bit of personality profiling now as well. So like the DISC profile and things that we do when we first join ProFit, we have like personality tests that we look at. I use that a little bit because it definitely helps. And I might discuss a little bit of that as I dive into that. But the 3 client types, which I've adapted from the Precision Nutrition style, are the type 1, which are like the tortoises. So these are your clients who are going to be very slow at change. They're potentially not going to be the most compliant, and they may get quite slow results. They tend to need a habit-based, a very sort of slow habit-building-based approach to their nutrition and their lifestyle changes. They're brilliant to work with. When you get results with them, it's really, really rewarding. You're definitely there to support them, to motivate them. They're the kind of clients who, personality-wise, they might be teachers, carers, those who really care for other people, who really put other people before them. So mums and dads are the nightmare for it. When you work with, sometimes you work with mums and they just literally don't ever think about themselves. And what tends to happen is they get, first of all, the goal can be too far away for them. So they just see the mountain. They see the top of the mountain and they freak out. They potentially get too much information thrown at them. So they have family, relatives, friends, magazines, social media telling them all this kind of stuff. And it's almost like a stress overload. They tend to be people who may be more emotional thinkers and those who potentially are not as good at dealing with stress long term. So they might be more emotional eating is more likely to be seen with these types of clients. And what happens is they get given too much information and they don't know what to do with it. So as I said before, they're confused and they just sit quietly and don't do anything. With these clients, we have to take it slowly, break things down, make it simple for them. And as I said, really just help on the education side, just really simplify nutrition, clear the picture. So they just have to focus on that one or two key elements, which is going to help them move forward. So they're the first type of client I talk about. The second one, I'm going to jump over to the third type. So they're the hares. So you've got the horses, you've got the hares. So the hares are the clients who are highly motivated, high skilled. They just come in, you tell them what to do, they're going to do it. They get quick results. They literally, you blink and they're at their goal. And you think, how have you even done that? And they just always constantly want to do something. They always want to learn, want to do something new. And they're amazing. These are the people you tend to see on the before and afters. These are the ones that trainers, this was the 20% in my early days where I was just like high-fiving them, all because they were just amazing, just did exactly what I asked. With these, yeah, they're definitely more direct personality, I would say. They're definitely more assertive. They're very driven people as well. The one thing I would say with this type of client, though, is you have to be wary that they burn out quicker. So they say the brightest star burns out the quickest, and it's definitely the case with these guys. I've had times when these clients, they achieve their results, say, within 3 months, and then you never hear from them again. And they've moved on, and they're constantly just bouncing like from one thing to another. They burn out quite quickly. So with these, it's about making sure you continuously measure their progress so they can see that they're moving forward, because that's what they want to see. And you have to always keep their feet on the ground. It's the best way to describe it. You have to keep their focus for longer. And then you've got the third type we're going to talk about is the guys in the middle. They're like the honeybees, I like to call them. So they're the ones that work exceptionally hard. So the ones who are really compliant, but don't tend to get the results that they should get compared to what they're putting in. So with this kind of client, you're going to look and find that there's two things going on here. They're either compliant, and which you have to take. If someone tells me they are doing everything and anything that they're meant to, I will trust them on that, and I believe them on that. And it's up to me to play detective then to find out what's up. So someone could be following a map, but they can still get lost. It doesn't mean they weren't following the map in the first place. And it's either that or rule number one of nutrition, everyone lies. It could be that they're not necessarily as honest as you think they are or they're telling you. So I love working with this kind of client because you have to play detective, you have to ask a lot of questions, you have to be very inquisitive. Things like 24-hour dietary recalls are great. So you say, right, what did you eat yesterday? And you literally list it. You start to find what they're telling you and the reality, and you bridge that gap. You go, okay, that's what's missing from your food diaries. That's where you're going wrong. You are complying. You are filling out your MyFitnessPal, your food diary. However, you're forgetting the sugars in your milk, in your teas. You're forgetting the 2 biscuits you have with every brew. You're forgetting, you don't know your portion sizes. So it's just looking to find out, where can we help these people? Because as soon as you find that area, that just one thing that's, I guess, missing in their plan, you can bridge that, and you can help them and educate them on that, and then you should see their results really accelerate. So yeah, I love working with them people.
Just dipping back to those first types of people, so the people that are a bit slower, the tortoises.
Yeah.
You mentioned about taking things slower and introducing these small things, because I think this is quite a lot of our clients actually, so I think this one's worth digging into a little bit more. When you say introducing these small things, just to give a little clarity to the people listening, like, how small do these things need to be? You know, are we talking just getting them drinking enough water each day? Are we talking habit 1 is just track your food? Like, where do you tend to start with those types of people? I know there will be differences, but sort of how small, how significant, like where do we go with those people?
So I think you have to judge it on the person themselves. I like to push my clients to their limit of what I feel they can do, and then I like to give them more than they can do, and then I can learn from there where their level's at. So what I tend to do with someone who I know that they need to go a bit slower, I'll use a habit tracker, and I'll get them to come up with the habits. So we use lifestyle questionnaires within Perfect to understand what areas of their life they need to probably work on first. And from there, I get them to build up an idea of what kind of things could you start doing, and what kind of things do you need to potentially stop doing or continue doing. So we use the start, stop, continue method. And they're then just building their own habits. So yeah, it could be as simple as drinking more water. And for the next couple of weeks, I just get them to do that. It could be adding more veg. It could be just having a breakfast. One client recently, he's, I'd say he's more of a hare. He's definitely a quick starter, but we have started with more just habit-based or non-tracking, which we'll talk about in a little while. But the one thing he just implemented straight away, which has made him drop a stone basically in 3-4 weeks, is he said, I don't eat breakfast. And because I don't eat breakfast, I then binge at lunchtime. So I said, eat breakfast. So he just started eating breakfast. All of a sudden, he now doesn't binge at lunchtime. He lost a stone. So it's as simple sometimes as implementing one thing. The one thing I tend to do is I say, what one area do you feel you need the most help with, or what one area in the nutrition do you think you need to work first? And then we just go from there. And then I use, again, something I've used from Precision Nutrition, I learned from them, was the out of 10, how confident are you that you can achieve that? And if it's not a 9 or a 10 out of 10, I'll ask them, or I'll break it down for them. So if they say, I'm 8 out of 10 confident, I could do that every day. Okay, so how can we make that a 9 or a 10 out of 10? So how can we simplify that habit even more to the point where it's so easy? You're basically coming to me saying, I want to do more. I feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel like we have to get to that point. If we tend to set habits for people which they're not going to achieve, or they definitely don't sound like they're very confident in achieving, they're going to lose confidence. They're going to find it really difficult, because they're going to be like, I can't even drink 2 liters of water a day. So what's the point? So if you say, well, what can you do? Like, what you get 10 out of 10, what are you so confident? Like, brushing your teeth every day is just a natural habit. So what could you do every day? And then all of a sudden it's like a small win. It's just a little tick every day, which boosts them and builds them up to the next stage. And eventually it's like a snowball effect. And hopefully you get to a point where you can get them to do a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. And I think something worth highlighting there in what you've just said with that client example about adding breakfast in, something that's very easy to get sucked into when it comes to nutrition coaching and just nutrition in general is a lot of people start by looking at what needs taken away. And I know that's something I've heard you mention a lot of times, and people that have worked alongside you have mentioned, what can we add in? What can we, it's not always about what do we take away, it's what can we add in first? Because we don't always need to take something away. We can always add before we subtract. And sometimes that's the better route for some people. And that's a great example of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, we're going to say on just that one, if you go in there and someone who sits down with your nutrition is a very personal matter, and it's very much it's quite a sensitive issue for people, and people don't like their nutrition changing. People like what they like, and they don't want that messing with. So if you go in, you go, right, we're going to completely change everything about your life and everything that you knew, and this is the mistake I used to make, then you're going to get some people go, yep, I'll do that. Then others just, their heads fall off. So if you can just build it around their current lifestyle, around the foods they like, and literally just adapt something which is going to have the biggest impact, I think that's the way of doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think something potentially worth digging into as well a little bit, just because it popped into my head when you talked about it, with these second types of people, these honeybees, something that can be very easy for clients to miss off their food records and things like that, when they think they're being compliant and maybe they're not. Something that I think is very common that you didn't mention is alcohol. Like, talk to us a little bit about that, because again, I think that's something that a lot of trainers listening to this will have either dealt with or come across but not really dealt with. This idea of, I eat really well, but then when you start to dig in and ask the questions, I think something we forget as trainers is that our relationship with alcohol and our perception of what moderate alcohol intake or low alcohol intake is very different from some of our clients. My moderate alcohol intake might be, 2 bottles of beer at the weekend. Yeah. Someone else's might be 15 pints, so I think that's, although it's a very specific example, I think it's worth diving into a little bit, just because it's probably a lot more common than we realize.
Yeah. So alcohol, again, for many years, and it sounds stupid now when I say it, I didn't actually understand how alcohol affected weight loss or fat gain. Or, you hear empty calories. I think that the problem with that word, empty calories, is I've always had some knowledge of nutrition. So the general public who may not have any, they may think that means it's calorie free, when actually that's not what it means. So when it comes to the alcohol, I will never tell my clients not to drink. There's certain times, maybe if someone has PCOS or they have something, like a metabolic syndrome like diabetes, or they're pre-diabetic, I may advise them, look, alcohol's not really to be advised right now, or you should definitely limit it. But in general, I will never tell a client not to do something. When it comes to alcohol, it's one of them, I think you have to educate them that they understand there is calories in it. I create infographics for literally everything, and I have one for alcohol. So that's one of the first ones I send my clients. So I show, look, a bottle of wine has 600 to 700 calories in it. So if you have that, it's still calories. It's still being basically taken out of your budget for the day. If they understand that, I think they're a bit better. But what tends to be is, you're finding out what people actually drink. And then for me, it's not actually the alcohol, it's the issue. I can obviously give them some tips. I can help, say, diet sodas, for example, clear spirits, try to stay away from things like the Guinness and the pints. But again, I don't want to be telling people what they should and shouldn't drink. Alcohol is alcohol at the end of the day. There's no good or bad alcohol. There's calories you just have to look at. It's actually the food that comes with it. So I have to educate people on, right, but when you drink, do you then go and have food after? Oh yeah, and they don't think that counts. It's like Cinderella. So if it's at 12 o'clock, it doesn't count. So they have a kebab before they come home, or pizza. We don't put that on the food diary. The McDonald's breakfast the day after, that's not in the food diary. The carvery. So you can end up being really good Monday to Friday, and then completely wiping out every single thing you've done well in terms of creating a calorie deficit throughout one weekend. And it's mainly the food afterwards. So I like to just make sure that they've got some good habits involved and almost like a good routine. If they're drinking, I focus on the eating during the day, what they should and shouldn't be eating potentially. And then going forward, hangover day, this is what you should be doing. High protein, plenty of water, keep account basically of what you're eating, and don't think of it as a free day. It's probably the worst time to have a free day.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that also helps people highlight how often they're giving themselves a free day, because it's probably more, clients like to tell us about, it was just a one-off, and it's like, yeah, but life's full of these one-offs, and they happen all the time. So we've got to build almost a routine around these one-off days, haven't we? And almost have this these go-to habits that we have. So if this, then that. So that's where those come in. And something you mentioned a little bit earlier on, which we were going to move on to anyway. So let's dive into that now, is the idea of tracking versus non-tracking strategies, which I know is something that you're going to go through with a group of our trainers this month. So talk to us, like, although it sounds very simple, like it probably exactly what it says on the tin, but just give us a brief understanding of what tracking versus non-tracking is, and then we'll dive into that a little bit in more detail in a second. So just to make sure everyone's clear, what does that actually mean, tracking versus non-tracking?
Sure. So when I talk about tracking and non-tracking, I mean different nutrition strategies and different nutrition interventions that we can put in to someone's nutrition or their lifestyle to have a positive effect. Now, the tracking side of things is numbers, basically. It's looking at calories, it's looking at macronutrients. It's the idea of if it fits your macros, you're fine. MyFitnessPal, that's an example of tracking. So tracking is one way of doing it, and you'd be very much mistaken to think it's the only way at the moment. Everywhere you look, it's calories, calories, calories. And yeah, calories and energy deficit are the main characters in the book, but they're not the only character. And I think what happens is people just focus solely on their calories, or they just focus too much intensity on the macronutrient intake. So that's what a tracking style would be. Another example would be Slimming World. For example, you track how many sins you have. So sins, points, they're another style. Anything that you've got a number and you're almost like comparing what you're having to that, it's almost like a comparison of numbers. Non-tracking is very much going down the road of habit-based building. So you've got things like just increasing protein, increasing veg in someone's diet. It could be some kind of fasting. So actually just take it to create an energy deficit. Instead of counting your calories, if you just remove breakfast, or like we did with my client, he's increased breakfast, he's added calories in the morning, but it's taken off about 900 at lunchtime. He's not tracking them calories, but by just adding in breakfast, he's creating an energy deficit. So non-tracking is just a way of basically getting results without having to record and track every single thing that you eat. And I said, for the first 5 or 6 years, all of my results with clients, which were really good, and yours will be the same, wasn't done with calories. Calories just wasn't the fashionable word in the industry. It was almost laughed at.
Yep. That's what the slimming clubs were doing.
Yeah, exactly. Then all of a sudden, like, everyone's talking about it. And when I talk on my Instagram and my videos and stuff, I always refer to calories because you have to. Like, you can't ignore it. However, you don't need to track to get results, which I think is important for trainers to know, because nowadays I think trainers are just getting lazy. I think they're just going, yeah, just go on MyFitnessPal, just follow, track your calories, you're fine, and then leave it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what tracking and non-tracking is.
And I think to maybe get people thinking about this in a few different ways as well, like you mentioned earlier about like a money analogy around food, that's something that I like to use quite a lot as well, because clients tend to understand that. And this is an example here of where, you know, you might have two people that we would consider wealthy, but the way they built that wealth might be done in two very different ways. You might have the guy that's tracked every single penny and minimized his expenses to get to where he's got to. And then you've got the other guy who hasn't cared about what his expenses are. He's just invested and spent his money to build and grow. And, you know, they're both wealthy. They've both got there in very different ways. That's your tracking versus non-tracking.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good way of describing it. I think again, we're going back to when we said about different types of clients and different personalities. Different people are going to require different ways as well of doing it. Not everyone likes numbers. I mean, as soon as I'm very much a logical thinker. I'm very maths based. I pretty much see numbers constantly. However, even I don't like to track my food. Now that might be because I pretty much know the calorie content of every single food anyway. I'm like a walking calculator. But even for me, even though it suits my personality, I don't necessarily enjoy it. So you have to find something, a way that works for people, which is what it's about.
So how would you recommend that trainers do that? Because I suppose if you link it back to these 3 client types, it sounds obvious that like a hair might easily fall into tracking, and then the other 2 personality types might be more on the non-tracking style. But as you've said, even yourself, that's not necessarily the case. So is it a trial and error thing? Is it, is there anything you can do to assess that for people?
What I tend to do is I give people a bit of both. I like to give them the option of both. And when I do my presentations, I like to make sure there's a lot of different learning styles in it. And then people will pick up on that. And then eventually you start to understand what your client likes. So I'm just going to go through a few actual strategies of tracking. And then there's both rigid and flexible tracking. So when it comes to tracking, as I said, if we use MyFitnessPal and calories as a just dead simple tool, we have that. And most people will be familiar with that. And there's 80 million users worldwide now on MyFitnessPal. So people like to track the food. The pros of it is you obviously get to see it. There's no lying. The numbers are just there. You can see exactly what you're eating as long as you're honest. It's only as good as you are honest. And then you get instant feedback as well. So they're like pros of it. The cons, you have to be better at tracking. I said if you're reading a map upside down, you will get lost. So you have to get good at tracking, and it can become quite obsessive for some. So that would be a style of tracking. However, you can then do rigid or flexible. So rigid would be the idea of just setting someone's calories and saying, this is what you've got to hit every day. Setting someone's protein target. So I always give someone a calorie and a protein target. For me, they're the 2 most important things to track if you're going to track. And it's like, if you're doing rigid tracking, it's like, right, that's your calories and that's how much protein. So say it's 150 grams of protein per day, you have to hit that each day. This is how many macronutrients you have to have, this is your calories. The problem with rigid tracking is exactly what it says on the tin. You lose any kind of flexibility, so you can't live your life, I guess is the best way of saying it. People have to very much go, well, I have to eat another 7 grams today, so I have to cut off this little bit of chicken because that's exactly what I need to hit today. Now, if you look at the flexible style, flexible is more about ranges and averages. So if I set someone up on MyFitnessPal, I give them an average calorie target and an average protein target between one number and another. So instead of 150, it could be 125 to 175. As long as you're in that range, on average, I don't care what you've done that day. That's all I'm bothered about. The pros and the benefits of doing more flexible is people have more flexibility. If they're going out at the weekend, they can manage their account, their calories better. So they don't have to think, well, I can only have 2,000 calories every day. I only had 1,500 yesterday, which allows me an extra 500 today if that's what I want to do. It removes stress and it allows more freedom with people's lives, and going to definitely increase adherence. And the research shows people who follow flexible tracking, so even if you are using MyFitnessPal and you are tracking it but flexibly, so you're using like a weekly average instead of stressing out about if you've gone in the red each day or gone below, better weight loss, better relationship with food, less likely to overeat. And those who are rigid, who are really scared to move out of their lines of how many calories, what kind of foods they're eating that day, they're more likely to overeat, more likely to binge eat, less weight loss, more likely to be stressed, and more likely to have depression linked to food because of it. So that's that side of it. When it comes to the actual people, I ask questions. If a client has a job which is very data-based or logical-based, I'm going to ask them, do you like numbers? Do you do spreadsheets? If I show them a spreadsheet, and I like spreadsheets, I know that they're probably going to be someone who is okay with numbers. If they're someone who works with people, I said maybe the hairs, the more maybe emotional or the more caring types, you can tend to work out in consultation. And when you're using that kind of communication, especially with experience, like you'll know, you get to understand. And I just ask questions. I say, do you prefer to track? Like if you had to do a food diary now, would you rather write out what you're doing, or would you want to track on MyFitnessPal and be able to see your numbers? From that gives me a good enough idea of what they're better to do. But I'll always give them a calorie and a protein range and average target to hit anyway. That way, if they want to track that, they can do. But if they don't have to.
Yeah. So you're at least giving them something to aim for, and then it's up to them to figure out their best way of doing that. Good. Yeah. I think even in that just little section alone, that'll give people a few light bulb moments in terms of little things that they could be doing differently with clients, because there's some really good stuff in there. So sort of moving away slightly from nutrition, although some of these questions are still nutrition based, I wanted to go through a few sort of quick fire questions, because there's a few other areas I wanted to ask you about as well, because there's so much stuff you've done over the last 10 years or so. It's worth diving into some of these other things as well. So I've got sort of 4 or 5 quick fire questions here, so we'll dive into these. So since starting out as a PT and a nutrition coach, you mentioned earlier you've always been an avid learner.
Yeah.
For you, like as a business owner, someone that's got to look after clients and do all these other things around that, what has been your sort of best or favorite learning tools, strategies? Like, how have you built that into your career? Because it's something, again, that's quite difficult to do at times when you're running your own business, and that it's hard to do. You found a good way of doing it. Like, what's worked for you over the years?
So I'd say I'm just thinking that I've probably got 4 of my favorite learning tools over the years. First of all, my clients and the people I've worked with over the years. I think you learn the most from them, from your mistakes, from your successes. The second, from other personal trainers and all the guys in ProFit. The amount of times I might be teaching someone who's just been a PT for like 3-4 weeks, and they say something, I go, oh, that's brilliant. Why have I never thought about that? And it's just, sometimes someone just says something from a different angle, and something just happens. You go, yeah, that's exactly what I needed to do. Something, I can't remember, I was speaking with a client this morning, and I just had this really good idea straight from it. And I was like, right, I've got a plan, I've got to do this straight away. And the 2 learning tools, I guess, in my early days, especially Precision Nutrition, their website was brilliant, and their course was really good. It really helped me. They have a lot of free infographics, so I always recommend people do that. And then in recent times, I'm doing the MAP Nutrition course online, which is brilliant. I feel like it's just helping me just understand that I already know what I'm talking about, which adds a little bit more to that. But their mentoring lab is brilliant. Like the MAP mentorship is really good. It's like a Facebook group where everyone helps each other out. It's evidence-based, and it's just a brilliant environment to be around. And you get a lot of good content, tools, seminars from the experts. So I always recommend the new trainers look at Precision Nutrition and the MAP mentorship for actual learning resources going forward. But you can't beat learning from your clients and your fellow colleagues.
Yep. And then to follow on from that, without us potentially going down a bit of a rabbit hole, when you look around the industry now, and especially look at like newer trainers that haven't yet worked with a lot of clients, what do you think are some of the most common mistakes people are making when it comes to their nutrition with the clients? You know, are we complicating things? Are we not tracking? Are we, we're being too specific? Where do you see sort of 1 or 2 of the biggest mistakes people tend to be making?
I think some trainers are scared. I think you said it right at the beginning. They run away from nutrition and lifestyle. Personal trainers, their comfort blanket is the gym. They feel safe in the gym. When they have to sit down in a consultation room and basically strip back someone's lifestyle and help them make changes, it's much harder. So I think people have to be a bit more assertive and a bit more confident in that side of things. I think we assume too much as well. I think we assume that our clients know more than they potentially do. I think that's one of the things. So sometimes I remember one of the early days, I remember telling one of my first clients at ProFit, have a protein breakfast. And after 2 weeks, I asked him, and basically he'd been eating pancakes every morning. And I presumed he knew what protein was, but he's obviously heard protein pancakes in the advertising, social media, and gone to eat pancakes every day. So you have to make sure that you're educating your clients. Don't ever assume that they already know what you're talking about. Keep it that simple. And then, potentially overcomplicating things as well. Or just expect, a bit like I did in the beginning, just the modern way, just go track your calories and you'll be fine. And actually that might not work for people. And if they don't even know how to track, if they don't know how much something weighs or how much a portion is, tracking is useless anyway. So go and learn other ways to help your clients. There's more out there. There's more to the world than just MyFitnessPal and calorie.
Yeah. And then something else I was keen to ask you, which is quite a big question, really. It's almost trying to predict the future almost, but people's approach to nutrition is changing all the time. We've seen loads over the years. How, if at all, do you see people's approach to nutrition changing over the coming years? So, for example, the biggest shift I've seen recently is people are a lot more open to a plant-based diet now. Yeah. I think one of the reasons for that is because it's been rebranded as plant-based as opposed to vegetarian or vegan or whatever. I think that rebranding's done it some favors. Previously, we've seen things like dairy-free, gluten-free, all of these things. Like, how do you potentially see this playing out? Like, where do you think we end up? Do we end up not eating meat at all of us? Like, do we end up, I don't know, do we live on rice cakes for the rest of our lives? Like, where do you see this going? Because there always seems to be the next extreme. Sort of, do we go full circle and come back and find a place of just balance and eat all things, but in moderation? I'd love to know what your thoughts are on all of this.
Well, the plant-based movement is definitely growing, which I'm not actually against.
No.
It's one of those where I think we do need to eat more plants and plant-based food. It's interesting to see where it goes with it. I don't think we'll go meat-free, but I think it's just good that people are starting to. It was doing a report in my first year, my foundation year at uni, on the effects, on the greenhouse effects of meat. And basically, I interviewed all the ProFit trainers. I got them to a questionnaire on how much meat do you actually buy per week. And the ProFit trainers were buying, I think, 300% more than the average person in terms of meat. And I worked out what was going to happen if everyone bought as much meat and ate as much meat as we advised at the time. And it really made me think, I need to eat less meat. I don't need this much, and I should eat more plant. So I'm all right with that one. I'm really excited about gut health. I think going forward, that's going to be a huge thing. I've done a few qualifications in that. It's something that when I go into dietetics, I presume it will be one of the areas I pursue. Digestive health, gut health, IBS. That I think will long-term be something that becomes bigger. The one main one that, again, is really exciting because it's very much in its early years is nutrigenomics. The idea of there's actually having a DNA test or like a gene test and being given personal nutrition prescribed based on that. So nutrigenomics is basically our genes and how they then relate to our response to food. So if we take caffeine, for example, I am a slow metabolizer of caffeine. Yesterday, I had 4 coffees in the morning, which is 3 too many, and I didn't sleep till 2 a.m. So I'm a really slow metabolizer of caffeine. Other people can drink a pint of it before bed, and they'll sleep straight through. And it's this idea that we all respond differently to nutrients, we all respond differently. And although at the moment the science is very much in its infancy, and I wouldn't recommend people go out there necessarily to get DNA and gene tests because there's not really the evidence backing them at the moment. Long term, I definitely see that as being key, because what they have done, and the people who are the specialists in this area, the studies are showing that adherence increases when you get given a personal nutrition plan based on your genes. And when I heard it, the way I thought about it was, if you're sat listening to someone and you're in a crowd, you can easily zone off and you can switch off because you think they're not listening to me, they're not thinking of me. And it's very much the same as when the government are saying we should have this much fish, this much protein, this much carbs, we should have 2 fish, 1 oily a week, 8 glasses of water a day. You go, yeah, so what? I understand. Yeah, everyone should do more. You're in a crowd. As soon as you're picked out of that crowd, or the presenter asks you or speaks to you directly, you have their attention, you're fully committed. And I definitely see long-term that being something that's definitely going to take off. The idea that when the science is there for it, we get personal nutrition and we know exactly what foods we should eat more of, and potentially the type of diet we should eat for our genetic base.
Yeah. I think when we go down that route, things will get very interesting, because people seem to be more keen about learning about themselves, and like you only have to look at how many people are wearing smartwatches and things like that now. They want to know how many steps they've done. They want to know how many hours they've slept. They want to know this. They want to know that. So if they can know every nuance about what their body reacts to, I think people will flood into that. Sort of a final one from me is, for anyone listening now that's, let's strip things right down, really basic. All they want to do is leave this podcast that they've just listened to and help more of their weight loss clients get results, and do that on a consistent basis. What are the 2 or 3 key takeaways or action points you would give those people?
First of all, make sure you actually listen to your clients, ask questions, find out where you can help them instead of you deciding what they need. That's definitely the first thing. And find and learn new ways to help more people. Like, if the more you know and the more tools you can build up and the more knowledge, the more people you can help, and the more ways you can manage a situation as well. So you're not left with how I was in my early years, with literally option A or nothing. I think now I personally feel I could help literally anyone now when it comes to nutrition, no matter if they're new or a professional athlete. I generally feel I can help them because I've learned so much and I've allowed myself. And I guess what I had to do first was become open-minded. I had to take responsibility. I had to become open-minded and move out of my own way and allow myself to accept I was wrong at times. And it's okay to be wrong. What I would say is, if you're wrong, just go and learn more and put those wrongs to right. And that's all I'd say. And just always continuously learn as well, because there's always new developments, especially nutrition. It's such a wide sort of scope of practice.
Yeah, definitely. And I follow you on social media, Adam. I see you putting out a lot of content out there and a lot of good, useful stuff. So for anyone listening now that doesn't follow you, where can they come and find you? Where will they find you online if they want to see what you're doing and see what you're teaching?
So you'll find me on Instagram at adam.cummins_nutrition, and on Facebook. So it's linked to that. So you've got Adam Cummins Nutrition on Facebook as well. So they're the 2 places you'll tend to find me on social media.
Fantastic. And to finish off with today, are there any sort of final thoughts that you want to leave people with? Any little sign off to finish for today, just to end the podcast with?
Just, I guess, if it comes down to nutrition, it's such a wonderful thing, and I want people to go away understanding it. It's actually really simple, and it's not something that they should be stressed about, and they should enjoy food. Food's something that we should enjoy, and we shouldn't get so caught up in the idea of having to have this perfect body and how restricting ourselves, restricting the way we eat, and restricting our life just to look good, especially for social media, especially for other people. And yeah, just to embrace it, improve your relationship with food. I generally believe the happier you are with food and the less stressed you are, the easier everything becomes when it comes to your results.
Yep, I'd agree with that. Absolutely. And you see that when clients make that switch, everything just seems to come easier to them. So yeah, that's a massive point to end the show with there. This has been a great chat, Adam. I feel like we could have gone on a lot longer. There's way more conversations we can have around nutrition, so I'm sure we'll get you back on at some point, because you're always delivering new things to our guys. So thank you very much for coming along today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. It's been great. Thank you.